ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που ήρθατε στη σημερινή ενότητα, στην πρωινή ενότητα του Delphi, δεύτερης μέρας του Delphi Forum. Η συνομιλία μας θα γίνει στα αγγλικά. Αποφασίσαμε να ακολουθήσουμε τα διεθνή standards. Εφόσον όλη η επικοινωνία έχει γίνει στα αγγλικά, θα μιλήσουμε στα αγγλικά. Η κυρία Ψαλτοπούλου θα τιμήσει την ελληνική γλώσσα και θα μιλήσει στα ελληνικά. So I will now switch to English. I would like to welcome everyone in this session about successful models of healthcare, life sciences research, and pharma industry synergy for economic growth. So let me give you a brief introduction about our panelists. We have experts who have worked in different models, either national or corporate models of synergy between research and industry that had strong impact in the economy of a region or a country. One of our panelists is Dr. Harietta Eleftherochorinou, Dr. Maria Mirotsou, Dr. Vasilis Ntziachristos, and Dr. Theodora-Psaltopoulou Dimopoulou. And I will give you a very brief introduction about what this is about. So there are several countries that have set up productive structures, and these structures are structures of high density scientific knowledge that create opportunities for investment in manufacturing of new products and development of new applications. And these structures actually work because they provide certain incentives for the establishment of public and private research centers, hospitals, large industries and startups of a specific scientific orientation. So today we will discuss about whether this is feasible in Greece, what the Greek market is, how the Greek market is, and what it needs to be done. So I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves in the next 2 or 3 minutes. So I will start with Dr. Harietta Eleftherochorinou. Please turn your microphone.
Is now better? Great. I am the Managing Vice President of Innovation Ventures at IQVIA. IQVIA is a global multinational organization that is offering connected solutions from molecule to market to the world's largest pharmaceutical clients, predominantly clinical trials, real-world evidence, market access, and commercialization. Through my role, I manage our global investments in startups as well as our strategic partnerships of innovation. In Greece, I am a member of the ESETEC, which is our national council advising the government on matters of research, technology, and innovation. And I'm also a member of the organizing committee of CEV, the Hellenic Organization of Enterprises, responsible for leading efforts in scaling up our innovation ecosystem.
Dr. Ntziachristos.
I'm a professor of medicine and professor of electrical engineering at the Technical University of Munich. I'm the head of the Department of Bioengineering at the Helmholtz, Munich, and I'm also the director of the Institute for Electronic Structure and Lasers at VIII in Crete.
Dr. Mirotsou.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. This is the first time I joined the forum, and I'm looking forward to a constructive discussion. I'm currently the VP and Head of Research in a new startup company. It's a biotech company, a spin-off from Stanford University, and I have a long career both in academia and industry. And through these interactions, I have been involved in patent applications, patent transfers, and more importantly, in setting up sponsor research agreement, sponsoring academic institutes in the United States, as well as scouting, providing through our internal VC and BD activities in biotech companies for licensing, acquisitions, and integrations.
And Dr. Psaltopoulou.
Καλημέρα σας, είμαι και εγώ Dora Psaltopoulou, παθολόγος, καθηγήτρια ιατρικής στο Πανεπιστήμιο Αθηνών. Έχω δουλέψει σε φαρμακευτική εταιρεία, οπότε γνωρίζω και την πλευρά της φαρμακευτικής εταιρείας στην Ελλάδα μεταπτυχιακό στο Harvard και έχω και κλινικές μελέτες στο δημόσιο σύστημα υγείας. Εγώ χαρακτηρίζομαι και από το δημόσιο σύστημα παιδείας, τριτοβάθμια εκπαίδευση στην Ελλάδα, και από το δημόσιο σύστημα υγείας στο νοσοκομείο Αλεξάνδρας, όπου έχουμε πολλές κλινικές μελέτες, ογκολογικές, αιματολογικές, ενδοκρινολογικές, και έχουμε μία στενή σχέση και με τις φαρμακευτικές εταιρείες, τόσο του ΣΦΕ όσο και της ΠΕΦ. Οπότε θεωρώ ότι είναι ένα πολύ σημαντικό κονσόρσιουμ εδώ για να μιλήσουμε για τις βέλτιστες πρακτικές διεθνώς και πώς αυτές μπορούν να γίνουν πραγματικότητα στη χώρα μας.
Thank you very much. So, this panel has done some preliminary work, and we decided, instead of parallel monologues, to have a discussion with questions. So, I would like to start with Dr. Eleftherochorinou and ask her to share with us her experience with a successful exam in our neighborhood, which is Israel. Can you please describe what Israel has achieved and how they did it? And based on your experience that you already mentioned with SETEC, what analogies do you see in Greece that can make the plan of creating such a structure of synergy between industry, research, academia in the country?
Absolutely. First of all, IQVIA operates in 100 countries, and we have innovation initiatives going on with startups in at least 18. Israel is an interesting case study to look at, and indeed it's our neighbor. Israel is called the startup nation, as a hotbed of innovation, is backed by world-class talent, medical centers, and research organizations that they all turbo boost the health tech sector growth. It'd be important to look at Israel in numbers. The Israel innovation ecosystem came together in 2015. In the last 8.5 years, it counts 8,000 startups that they raise about $10 billion annually, and this is a flat figure compared to 2020. This is a great reference for us to have an appreciation of realistic timelines, how long it takes to drive national economic growth through an innovation ecosystem. Of all of this capital, 75% comes from international investors and primarily the US. The ecosystem is a maturing one. In fact, it's now a scale-up ecosystem. We see a declining number of new startups being founded, as well as of number of deals. Deals are concentrated more in later stages, and therefore it's really an indication, like I said, of the maturity. Final point, when we're counting success stories for Israel, since 2015, there have been 18 companies that exited exceeding $1 billion, and then 13 of them were in the range of $1 billion to $5 billion. If we were now to focus only on the health tech vertical, which is the one that we are interested, 1,600 startups focus on health. This is about 20% of the ecosystem. Within that, two major segments, digital health and biotechnology, account together for 80% of the health vertical. This means we are seeing a focused and concentrated ecosystem in Israel. Importantly, 22% of them are already revenue generating, 40% of it is stage B and above, again another indicator of the maturity of the ecosystem. Now, Konstantinos asked me, what did Israel do to become so successful so quickly, right? And there are plenty of things, but at an abstract level, we are counting 5 core ingredients of success. First, the public and the private sectors are collaborating very closely at the forefront of medical research. Second, there is strong connectivity on all the players of the ecosystem, which in turn allows ideas to move quickly to ventures by a number of technology transfer offices, research hubs, technology hubs. In fact, all big tech corporations and all large pharma have hubs in Israel, and IQVIA has a physical innovation hub. In fact, my team launched it there, and now we are expanding around the world. Number 3, there are processes in the hospitals, as well as the framework, that enables the system to test novel technologies in real patients. This is of tremendous importance for startups that are able to collect real-world evidence of their solutions from real patients early on. Number 4, Israel is playing it to their strengths. They were already leaders in medical innovation and high tech, and it is the same skills now that they're applying in healthcare. And in fact, they have been collecting healthcare data digitally for the past 25 years, right? This makes them a unique resource globally for data-driven solutions that startups develop. Final and important point, they are very connected with the American Jews and the Israelis in the US, which allow them to raise international funds and also scale up in the US. Now, leaving Israel for a second and looking at our turf, Greece. Our ecosystem consists of 800 startups, right? At least those are in the Elevate database, and this means that we are 10 times smaller than Israel. These startups have raised about 1 billion collectively since 2018, 85% of which comes from international investors, which is a positive trend. When it comes to our success stories, our largest exit to date has been on the 300 million mark, followed by a few on the 50 million mark. But again, the positive thing is that we have a few unicorns, not in health, but at least in other industries coming up. If we were to look in the health sector only, we have 100 startups. Again, at least those are registered. Within those 100 startups, 50% are in digital health, about 10% is in biotech, and then we have quite a few in IVD, bioinformatics, diagnostics, and so forth, which means that we have too much diversification for such a small ecosystem, right? When it comes to our maturity, 60% of our companies are at seed stage and 30% is Series A, which again allows us to conclude that we have a baby ecosystem, again, different to the mature ecosystem of Israel, but this is not a bad thing because we can shape it in the direction that we would like. We also have tremendous Greek power in the diaspora, but we are not that connected with the mothership, and our hospitals are not ready yet to enable testing of novel solutions in real patients. So coming to the end and summarizing all these comparative insights of Israel and Greece, we reach a couple of conclusions. Drawing from lessons learned in Israel, it doesn't take a lifetime to drive national economic growth through an innovation ecosystem, right? And there is plenty of opportunity for Greece, so long as we take the right actions. Our priorities should include, first, to nurture our baby ecosystem to maturity. Second, increase our connectivity of the local players, public with the private, pharma, with startups, with academia, and so forth. Increase our connectivity with the diaspora through platforms such as Innovative Greeks. And final point, focus. Have a national focus strategy where we would focus only on a couple of health sectors where we will try to excel and be able to attract bolder and bigger investors internationally.
Thank you. You mentioned that we have some unicorns which are not in healthcare, and this actually facilitates the transition to the question I had for Dr. Vasilis Ntziachristos, who, let's say, represents an area which is an emerging field in the United States called bioengineering, which sounds like it's totally underdeveloped in Greece and I think also in Europe. So would you like to share with us your thoughts about this case and about the reasons that it seems to be underdeveloped? And if it was developed, do you think, what would be the ways that it would help research grow further?
Yeah, great. Thank you for the question. I think bioengineering is a tremendous opportunity for Greece, exactly because not even Europe has picked up on it. And to understand what bioengineering is, I think I can very quickly sort of get you into the thinking. We're talking about health and improving life science in general. So just think in any other area from a scientific standpoint, any other area of life, who improves things? Who brings solutions? So who improves transportation? Who improves communications? Who improves energy, manufacturing, homes? Who does this? How do we call these people? How do we call these people? Anyone? We call them engineers. Engineers do that. So who educates engineers in medicine? Where are the engineers? Where are the engineers in life sciences, biology? Where are they? So we want to improve something, we want to improve solutions, and we do not train anyone to do it. Isn't that a huge paradox? How are we going to do it if we don't have engineers? Engineers in bioengineering doesn't mean you take an electrical engineer and you teach him cell biology and physiology. It means you train somebody to understand the problem and make problem solving their career choice as opposed to discovery. So essentially you have two pillars. You have discovery and you have problem solving. Physicists, for example, when you build planes, physics and mechanical engineers operate on the same knowledge, but they have a different career path. And the same needs to happen in medicine. They will be educated in biology medicine, but they will have problem solving as a career choice. When you do problem solving, you are much closer to bring products. You build solutions. So now you're going to have all of this ecosystem of spin-offs and a positive economy. And so it's a tremendous opportunity because in Europe there are only 7 faculties in the entire Europe that educate people in bioengineering. And still this bioengineering, including in the US, it's bioengineering because of this career building path that they still go into discovery at the end of the day and not real problem solving, even from the bioengineering departments today. Because problem solving is where the publications, the discovery is where still the publications are. There's no critical mass because it's still biology that dictates the field, so it's very difficult for bioengineering to flourish because simply there are no bioengineers. So who's actually going to make the move when there's no little flame burning somewhere to do this, especially in Europe? So I think in Greece it's a tremendous opportunity. One of my major question marks and complaints is why in Greece it seems we're always following. Why don't we just, for a change, start doing something truly unique that others can follow? And I think bioengineering is an area where for the first time we can actually lead the way, at least in Europe, and have others follow us. And that creates, of course, then bioengineers. It's a unique ability and skill. An economy based on products that these bioengineers produce for improving health. And so I think we can lead by example. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next question is to Dr. Maria Mirotsou. So there is a lot of discussion about research in Greece described as a fragmented ecosystem. So when you discuss with clinical investigators, they say that medical schools do not interact much with the hospitals and the pharma companies. When we discuss about technology transfer in a basic sciences department, it sounds like science fiction that this cannot happen in the country. Your experience is from some very successful ecosystems of synergy between academia, industry, research. So first of all, what do you think that it would take to facilitate the connection between these components, and what has worked in places like Boston, North Carolina, that you have experience with? And these are places that I think Greece can use as examples. North Carolina has approximately the same population with Greece. What happened there, and why did it work there, and what Greece can do in order to follow these examples and establish innovation and use research as a driving force for the economy?
Thanks, Kostas. I'm going to talk a little more about from the research point of view that I have the experience with. And I have to admit that the relation between academia and industry is not always, it's a little bit challenging. If you think about it, the core of academia is to publish their work, whereas in industry you need to keep a little bit the information, at least for the early stages. But what is true is that if we think about the incentives, for instance, from pharma, if we think about the environment here or in the United States or in Europe, if you think about pharma, the main goal is to drive the pipeline and how we can get results in a timely manner and of high quality. And when we think about how to force this type of relationships, we need to think about the type of questions that industry might be asking. For instance, in the research department, we might be thinking, how can I outsource my early stage research or exploratory research in a way that I can get quick answers before I go and invest a huge amount of money or resources in something that might be proved not to be worthwhile. The other aspect, I think, has been mentioned, talent is very crucial. How I can get access to talent that will just drive this type of innovation, as well as key opinion leaders, and proximity to this type of resources is very crucial. And if we think, on the broader, you can think about access to patients that you mentioned, or maybe the legal landscape and regulatory landscape that can facilitate innovation. So the key issue is how can we align this interest in a way that creates an environment that is self-sustained and create the critical mass to drive innovation, to drive growth, and ultimately maybe, to bring drugs to patients. So, and I want to highlight the words self-sustained and critical mass, which I think they're very important for the long term of success of these initiatives. So if we look at the examples in the United States, for instance, Boston or North Carolina, each of these environments have their unique strengths. But if we look at them at the broader view, this type of successes can be attributed in some key factors. And first of all is the proximity or clustering of strong academic institutions, very strong in innovation, the proximity with industry being biotech or VC, talent, and I think, this is where, at least in Greece, we can have a very good starting point. The presence of VC, for instance, in Boston has, I think, VC starting in the 80s, and I think we have some of the pioneers here that they know the environment very well. And of course, commitment from the government or the state. And one key aspect of it is long-term commitment. This is not something that started and it was just completed very early. Some of these initiatives have started maybe, 50 years ago. It took about 20 years to start seeing the results. And the key point is that when you start seeing results, there's a feedback loop that accelerates innovation and growth. And one aspect of it that I want to highlight is not only about industry and academia. As Harietta or Vasilis mentioned, we are building an ecosystem. You need the VCs, you need the funding, you need the government, you need the long-term vision and the focus to drive this in the next level. So if I have to think a little bit, just to bring the example of North Carolina, in the 50s, North Carolina used to be one of the poorest states in the United States. I think it was the 47th out of 48 states, and their GDP, their growth per capita was just very low. Traditionally, the state was focusing in tobacco, agriculture, manufacturing, but these industries were not doing very well. So what happened, the state of North Carolina decided, how can we drive, how can we bring the economy to the next stage, because they were losing a lot of talent. And they decided to invest in the Research Triangle Park, which is basically investing in land within the states, build the infrastructure, and then being committed over the next years through incentives, through tax incentives, and through active recruitment of companies to go and populate the Research Triangle. And as I said, this started in the 50s. It took about 20 years, but it put things on the map. It put North Carolina on the map of a space where people can go into innovation. IBM was one of the first places that moved there. There was some research and development labs, but minimal. But gradually, this was just growing. In the 80s, there were a lot of CROs that were looking for space. So this was just a great place to start growing. And some of other key advancements was the presence of Glaxo. They had a few labs with the development or formation of GlaxoSmithKline, which was in the early 2000s. They expanded their presence in the RTP. And this acted as an accelerator within, I think, a few years after the expansion of GSK now in the area and bringing their headquarters in the state. You could see a 64% in the presence of new spin-off companies that they were focusing in drug development and medical devices. And of course, this was just building the ecosystem of small companies and industry. And at the same time, you had the strong presence of 3 or 5 universities, Duke University, Chapel Hill, NC State, that they were feeding into this ecosystem. So where we are right now, after 50 years or so in North Carolina, the head is considered one of the strongest hubs in the United States. And I can just start giving some of the numbers I think they published recently. And what they have seen is that the RTP contribution right now is about 24 billion in the economy, which accounts about 6% of the GPT. there are about 50,000 jobs, direct jobs, and 300 indirect, total direct and indirect jobs, which is very impressive for from a state that was just suffering, had a very, of course, you know, the cost of life. It has some advantages. Cost of life is low. The environment is very nice, so that also led to recruitment of new people in the state. In the 80s, there were about 900,000 people in the RTP area. Right now, there are about 2 million. And they're projecting that by 2050, they're going to reach 4 million people, which means a growth in the global community in the area, in the context of building infrastructure. And one very big advantage that you have big growth in young families that coming and making the state their own home. So if you have time, I can just comment on some other examples, but I think this is a great example of success through a long-term commitment and alignment of all the factors in these areas.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Θα περάσω τώρα στην Δόκτωρο Ψαλτοπούλου, η οποία είναι στο πεδίο της μάχης, είναι στην Ελλάδα. Και θέλω να ρωτήσω, χθες ακούσαμε στις ενότητες που ήταν για την ανώτατη εκπαίδευση ότι η Ελλάδα κάνει πολλά πράγματα καλά. Ένας από τους λόγους για να προσελκύσει η Ελλάδα επενδυτές, για να γίνουν αυτά τα οποία συζητάμε σε αυτήν την ενότητα, είναι να πιστούν οι επενδυτές ότι η Ελλάδα είναι ένας χώρος που τα χρήματα που θα επενδυθούν θα έχουν μεγάλη απόδοση. Ήθελα να σας ρωτήσω λοιπόν, τα χρήματα που επενδύονται στην έρευνα στην Ελλάδα, πόσο αποδίδουν στην οικονομία της χώρας?
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ και χαίρομαι που και το επαναλαμβάνω, που είμαι σε ένα πάνελ με διακεκριμένους Έλληνες της Διασποράς, που εκτός από την τεράστια παραγωγή στο εξωτερικό προσπαθούν να βοηθήσουν και στη χώρα μας. Η χώρα μας που είναι και πολύ παλιά, αν σκεφτούμε την ιστορία, και πολύ καινούρια, αν σκεφτούμε πότε πήραμε τη Θεσσαλονίκη, οπότε είναι μια χώρα με πρώτο, δεύτερο παγκόσμιο πόλεμο, εμφύλιο, δικτατορία και τεράστια οικονομική κρίση που δεν πρέπει να την ξεχνάμε για τα 10 τελευταία χρόνια. Ταυτόχρονα βρίσκεται μέσα στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση και ακολουθεί τις διαδικασίες της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Χαίρομαι για αυτό που μου λέτε και χαίρομαι για το παράδειγμα του Ισραήλ, γιατί έχουμε προσωπική εμπειρία από το πανεπιστήμιό μας. Όταν πριν αρκετά χρόνια δημιουργήθηκε η διαδικασία της διοίκησης με συμβούλια των πανεπιστημίων, τώρα ξανά έχουν φτιαχτεί, αλλά τότε που είχαμε διακεκριμένους επιστήμονες από την Αμερική, προσπαθήσαμε και ήρθαμε σε επαφή με φαρμακοβιομήχανους Έλληνες, που ξέρετε, Ελληνοαμερικάνους, που έχουν τεράστια προσφορά στο αμερικάνικο γίγνεσθε και έχουν και δωρεές και χρηματοδοτήσεις. Όταν προσπαθήσαμε να φέρουμε χρήματα εδώ, από το κέντρο το ερευνητικό που είναι η Αμερική, καταλάβαμε την τεράστια δυσκολία. Το tax exemption στην Αμερική είναι μόνο για μέσα από την Αμερική και για το Ισραήλ. Επομένως, οι Αμερικάνοι φορολογούμενοι που μπορεί να ήταν Έλληνες μπορούσαν να δώσουν τα χρήματά τους εύκολα στην Αμερική και στο Ισραήλ. Όταν πηγαίνανε οι Έλληνες που είχαν μεγάλες δυνατότητες στις φαρμακευτικές εταιρείες, Μπεχράκης ας πούμε, που είδα και άλλοι, να δώσουν χρήματα στην Ελλάδα, υπήρχε μεγάλη φορολόγηση και προσπαθούσαμε να βρούμε ένα win-win type του στυλ, να παραμένουν τα χρήματα στην Αμερική και απλά Έλληνες να πηγαίνουν εκεί. Οπότε θέλω να πω καταρχήν ότι υπάρχει μία δυσκολία για μετακίνηση κεφαλαίων από την Αμερική στην Ελλάδα και το Ισραήλ θεωρείται σαν παράρτημα της Αμερικής από φορολογικής άποψης. Πάω στο δεύτερο σημείο, την τεράστια οικονομική κρίση. Η τεράστια οικονομική κρίση...
Με συγχωρείτε για τη διακοπή, επειδή έχουμε μόνο 5 λεπτά που απομένουν. Αν μπορούμε λίγο να εστιάσουμε στην ερώτηση, δηλαδή πόσο ένας άνθρωπος θα επενδύσει στην έρευνα στην Ελλάδα, από τα χρήματα που επενδύονται στην έρευνα στην Ελλάδα, από το κράτος, πόσο αποδίδονται στην οικονομία?
Το κράτος δεν είναι μόνο, είναι και δημόσια και ιδιωτικά τα funds. Όλα αυτά δεν είναι, αυτή τη στιγμή θέλω να πω ότι είμαστε σε μία συνέχεια και προσπάθεια ανάκαμψης μετά από μία τεράστια οικονομική κρίση. Όταν σε ένα δημόσιο νοσοκομείο έρχονται για χρηματοδότηση 10 εκατομμύρια ευρώ, από τα οποία τα 6 πηγαίνουν στη ΔΕΗ, καταλαβαίνετε ότι τη χρηματοδότηση για ερευνητικά προγράμματα, για με μεγάλη προσπάθεια κάνουν οι ίδιοι οι καθηγητές, φέρνοντας χρήματα, παραδείγματος χάρη από τις φαρμακευτικές εταιρείες, για έρευνα. Οι φαρμακευτικές εταιρείες έχουν πιεστεί με τεράστιο clawback rebate και οι οποίοι προσπαθούν, και τώρα έχουμε αρχίσει, έχοντας μια οικονομική ανάκαμψη, να βοηθιέται περισσότερο το research and development και στις φαρμακευτικές εταιρείες, είτε είναι ΣΦΕ είτε ΠΕΦ, για να μπορέσουμε να επενδύσουμε και με καινούρια κτίρια και με καινούρια μηχανήματα και καινούρια infrastructure ερευνητική, έτσι ώστε να αποδώσουμε και στη χώρα μας και διεθνώς. Επομένως, είναι ένα complex σύστημα, οι άνθρωποι υπάρχουν, οι δυνατότητες υπάρχουν τεράστιες. Βεβαίως, ένα ευρωπαϊκό οικοσύστημα που έχει άλλες δυσκολίες από το αμερικάνικο, αλλά το αποτέλεσμα μπορεί να είναι πάρα πολύ καλό αν μπορέσουμε, είμαστε, όπως μιλήσαμε και πριν, σε μια χώρα με ένα μεγάλο μέσο όρο των ανθρώπων που είναι στο δημόσιο τομέα, και φαντάζεστε την ψηφιακή μετάβαση πόσο δύσκολη είναι, ένα δημόσιο νοσοκομείο χωρίς electronic health records, οπότε πόσο δύσκολο μπορούμε από εκεί να πάρουμε δεδομένα. Θέλουμε και έχουμε μια μεγάλη collaboration μεταξύ μας. Το δημόσιο σύστημα και της παιδείας και της υγείας προσπαθεί και συνεργάζεται και με το ιδιωτικό σύστημα και με τις φαρμακευτικές εταιρείες. Χρειάζονται και περισσότερο incentive και προσπάθεια, φανταστείτε τις αμυντικές δαπάνες που έχουμε και από την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, έτσι ώστε να πάρουμε περισσότερες χρηματοδοτήσεις από εκεί. Δίνω ένα παράδειγμα μικρό. Πρόσφατα, πριν 5 μέρες, πήραμε η θεραπευτική κλινική του Πανεπιστημίου Αθηνών και η ιατρική σχολή, πήραμε μια εμβληματική πρόταση από τη ΓΕΓΕΤ. Αυτή ήταν 4 εκατομμύρια ευρώ. Για να βγει η απόφαση πάρθηκαν 6 μήνες και τώρα που είμαστε και μπροστά στις εκλογές δεν ξέρουμε πότε θα γίνουν οι ενστάσεις, πότε θα γίνει το τεχνικό δελτίο, πότε τελικά θα μπορέσουμε να την έχουμε και πότε θα δουλέψουν οι ερευνητές μας. Κλείνοντας, εγώ πιστεύω, είμαι αισιόδοξη, ότι η Ελλάδα σταδιακά ξεφεύγει από τις επιπτώσεις της χρόνιας οικονομικής κρίσης, που σημαίνει τεράστια πίεση και στις υποδομές, και στην έρευνα σταδιακά και στις κλινικές μελέτες μπορεί να αυξήσει το ρυθμό της και να πετύχει στο ευρωπαϊκό στερέωμα. Ευχαριστώ.
Okay, thank you very much. So to specify my question, and maybe this can help moving to the next question. So when the Human Genome Project was concluded in the United States, it was after some years they were calculating for every single dollar that was invested, there was a certain outcome, like $20 that helped the economy. So in Greece, we are discussing a lot about clinical research, that we don't do enough clinical research, but we want to. So my question to Dr. Eleftherochorinou would be, do you think that this is a space that Greece should invest? Is there enough space to grow in terms of financial capacity?
The short answer is absolutely yes, but let's put it in some financial context to quantify and qualify the opportunity for us. When it comes to clinical trials, to your question, every euro that we invest has a factor of 2.2 that provides a return on investment for everybody's awareness. It's important for us to appreciate the opportunity at the European level and the national level. There are 34 billion of clinical trials spent in Europe altogether, and of this 34 billion, Greece only has a share of 42 million. Okay, so we have 0.1% of the market share in Europe, which puts us in the 3rd position before the end, and it's only Turkey and Russia that come after us. So frankly, we are not doing great, and there is plenty of opportunity for us. If we were, let's say, to model it and go to the European average, that would enable Greece to generate up to 1 billion of GDP, again, to quantify the opportunity, and around 23,000 new positions. If we were to compare and contrast, this is the top opportunity for Greece. Financially, yes, it can have a significant impact, but as we discussed about innovation ecosystem, there are other ways that we could drive economical growth. But it is an important initiative that we should undertake because it will ultimately deliver better care for Greece, right? So the infrastructure that needs to be put in place to enable clinical trials would ultimately bring better therapies to Greek patients that are only available through clinical trials, as well as it would bring European and global standards of delivery of care.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't have much time left, so for the last couple of minutes, I would like to ask Dr. Ntziachristos, so do you think that Greece is a great place to do mostly research, mostly education, or both? I recently visited Ireland, and I was impressed by listening to a number that the Minister of Science mentioned, that in one institute called National Institute for Bioprocessing and Training, last year they trained 4,000 people who would work in industry with partnership of academia and industry. So what do you think?
I think we're really out of time, so very shortly, I believe that the change needs to come from education and, of course, from fairness across, from taxation systems to laws and things. This is what hurts us. I think we need to build on education. We have a unique opportunity. I agree also that we need to focus on certain areas if we want to have a competitive product. So focus on education will be important.
And the last question to Dr. Mirotsou, just to finish the session. What would take you back to Greece? What would you like to see in Greece in order to come back?
That's a great question. I think it will take a long time to have this conversation, but actually I just have to say this, that I was thinking in coming back to Greece around 2004. There was a great opportunity, some money from Marie Curie, great environment, very nice people. The thing that got me and I decided to stay abroad was that there was no, after the 3 or the 5 years that the money was running out from the funding, I was thinking what is going to happen next. So I think not for me, but maybe, for the younger generation, something to think about is the long-term initiatives. The money that can stand for 2, 3, 5 years, they will bring people, but we need to think about the long-term future of the people we want to bring back to Greece.
Thank you. So if I would like to summarize in a few words what we discussed and what needs to happen here is for the system to focus on a few things. Bioengineering could be an area that Greece can develop in both education and research, and the ecosystem that consists of strong academic institutions, opportunities to train talent, having access to funding agencies, and a government that shows patience and good planning, including the regulatory elements, is what is needed in order for the country to develop this kind of structure. Thank you very much for your participation.